up, brother?
What's up, man? How you doing today?
Good, good. And yourself?
I'm good. I'm just stuck in traffic. Our power went out, so it's kind of a cluster over here. But I should be at the studio in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. Got my dog.
Hey, what up, buddy?
That's Barley.
You see, Bart is not having it today.
No, he's like, wait, we're supposed to be going to the park or the beach right now. What's going on? I'm like, responsibilities, man.
Yeah, I feel you on that, brother. Jay, I just want to, give you the thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. Give me your time to hop on Talk.
I'm glad to speak to you, man. I love talking about this stuff. I've been kind of out of the scene for a long time, and just recently, kind of because of COVID, I got interested in it, and I remembered how much I loved it. So I'm pretty stoked to be painting again and doing a lot more art. So thanks for having me.
Definitely. It's always dope, to make time, to do that little extra spark.
No doubt, no doubt. And needless to say, I'm not like bombing the streets anymore. Going to jail for graffiti when you're 50 just isn't that cool. But my heart's in it, and we have a few great opportunities here in Southern California and LA and in San Diego where we can paint some really good legal yards, and we're good. Is that me or you?
Can you hear me? Hello? Looks like he left. Let's get him back in here. Give me 1 second. Let's see if we can reconnect. Seems to be a connection issue.
Hey, sorry about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's all good, brother.
All right, cool, man. So basically, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Give me the brief, like 1 or 2 line history lesson. When you start painting, and what's your favorite paint?
Yeah, just to give you a little brief of what I do. I started KrylonTalk, which is like an Instagram live series where I go live with a lot of graffiti artists like yourself, and
Yeah,
we just discuss how it just seems to a lot of people seem to forget. There was people doing graffiti a lot way before my time, and the people doing it now. So I try to inform people and let them know, like, there's pioneers to this. There's people that have been doing this for a while, and they started doing graffiti using certain utensils that are now available today. I also like to explain how hard it was before, and being a graffiti artist to how easy it is now.
yeah. It was easier back then in some ways because number one, there weren't nearly as many of us, and I can tell you the first 4 or 5 times I got busted, they would just call your mom, and your mom would come pick you up at the station. It's not like that anymore. So I think for the guys that are out there really getting up and bombing, it's pretty incredible the kind of work they put in and the risk they're taking. We were risking what we were risking, but it's a whole different ballgame now. That said, how much more paint is available, how many more colors, how much more accepted street art is. The first legal mural I did in the Valley, I got one picture of it, and by the time I advanced the film, the police buff wagon was there and they covered it. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. You can actually get legal walls and your stuff can run, and it's definitely a different landscape entirely. And I think the biggest difference is probably, just going back to the paint. I recently, I did my first piece about a week and a half ago in 5 years. And I went to the hardware store and I'm like, where's the semi-flat black krylon? Like, what are these like, like shotgun looking lids? Like, what's good? Nothing looked familiar. So you guys have a lot more options at your hands now. And, because there's a lot behind that, you have caps, you have thousands of colors. You have different qualities of paint. I mean, we literally had like 2 or 3 paints, period. That was it. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to ask if possible, if you could share with the people tuning in about what year you were out there painting, and what were you using to get up when you were starting?
Yeah, so basically, I have some cool. I think I might have shared with you earlier, but I have some cool photos. I don't keep that much stuff, unfortunately, but I have some pretty cool stuff from Krylon. And I started painting in 1984. So just briefly, you know, I would have to take the train from LA to San Diego for family reasons, and I would
Okay.
always see on the side of the LA River all these like Dogtown tags, and you know, I remember once at Union Station I saw these tags in every train tunnel that said Risk, Dante, and PJ, and that's
Okay.
when I really got interested in graffiti. So in '84, I remember I did my first spray paint tag at my junior high, and my name was Stingray.
Stinger.
So, yeah, and there's a lot more to the story than that. But by '88, I was piecing in LA, not just in the Valley. I was at Motor Yard and Pico and Belmont and whatnot. And, you know, I got down with AWR in 1989. And then I was in TCF in '88. And then before that, I was Ozone. So when I was Ozone, I was this tagger in the West Valley, and I got hit with like 6 felonies. I was like pretty much, I think, the first tagger in LA to get in that much trouble. So yeah, man, I kind of go way back, and then you know I stopped painting in the '90s for a little while, and then I hooked up with my crew again, and I paint through the '90s and the early 2000s, and then for the past 10 years, I probably painted 5 or 6 times total. So not much at all, but 2 of them were in the last week. So you know, I'm back in.
Can you share a little bit about what you were using when you started getting up for the first time back in '84?
Yeah, you know, it's crazy. So there evidently in '84 there was a scene in LA, but you know, in the West Valley where I was from, Woodland Hills, Canoga Park, Chatsworth, that area, there was really no crews, and there were very few taggers. So like I didn't really know anybody in the scene. So like I discovered different caps on my own, you know, like I'd be in there racking caps off the oven cleaners and stuff, you know, and trying to find the good ones. And then finally, Wise from KSN, he turned me on to the dot arrow caps that came on the testers cans. And those were the bomb. Those are like New York fat caps. They're like the best outline caps. I still feel that way. Maybe I'm just old school, but so basically, you know, we just started painting. You'd find spots that were out of the way that you could get up. And in my case, pretty much the only paint that I wanted to use is Krylon. There were a few other options. Obviously, Rust-Oleum was out there, and then there were like the store brands, but they all really sucked. So the whole goal was, how do I get Krylon? How do I rack Krylon? Because you know it was expensive, right? I think back then, I think it was $3 a can, maybe $3.99. I don't know. It was pricey compared to the dollar store brands, right? So we would devise like every way we could think of to rack spray paint. I mean,
did you have a favorite Krylon color? That's something that you like your favorite color?
Yeah, you know, my 2 favorite colors were pastel yellow and pastel aqua. And it's funny because it was the '80s, dude. You know, it's like Miami Vice, right? But I actually thought that if you got a good can of pastel aqua, it actually covered pretty good. It was just a fresh color. And then, you know, like as I started painting a little more and got comfortable using different color palettes, I think my 2 all-time favorite colors are actually from a totally different side of the color spectrum. They're topaz yellow and alpine green, the auto paint, the Krylon alpine green.
Nice.
These fresh, dusty greens and yellows. So yeah, those were my favorites. But you know, when you're tagging, I would always use either like Krylon silver, or I would use like the little testers cans just because they were easier to conceal. But
did you have something in particular that you like using to catch tags like a marker or a mean streak or anything of that nature?
We definitely did. We liked uni wides, but
Okay.
mean streaks were our go-to. And then we also made our own markers. You know, we would just buy like chalkboard erasers, and we would stuff them inside the actual little ink bottles, and we would get these fat, drippy markers out of them. And actually, one time I was bombing with Rage from TCF and KSN. He's like probably the most prolific tagger of that time. The guy just destroyed the city, and he invented tagging on silvers on telephone poles. That was like that. He invented that, and we got busted for tagging, but we were tagging with one of those homemade markers.
Okay.
And after you'd use it, you put the cap on it, right? Because you made it so you could still put the cap on. And the cops pulled us over and they searched our car and they couldn't find any paint or any writing utensils. They just saw bottles of ink. But so that strategy worked for us. We got off that time. So yeah, man, that was my favorite. I liked big drippy tags, but mostly my tags I tagged with. It was like I don't even remember the name of the paint, but it was the True Blue version that Testers makes a blue color that's like True Blue from Krylon.
Okay.
That was my go-to. When I was ozone, that's usually what I used.
How did you feel? How did you feel about the transition of the spray can of how, Krylon went against graffiti and changed up their formula and way tips work, and then Montana came in with more upgraded spray can?
Well, during that time, I wasn't that involved in graft during that transition, but early on in the 90s, we started using things like American Accents. I don't know if you remember those paints, but those were definitely one of my favorites. And Wildflower Blue was probably my favorite color. In fact, if you look at my Instagram today, I posted a big piece I did in Imperial Beach. And that piece basically, the whole background's Wildflower Blue. So when I did start getting back into graffiti, because there's been a few times I painted, I started getting back into it, and I couldn't believe all those Montana colors and the different pressure cans and all the caps. And, stream, right? You get all these opportunities and options, and it becomes acceptable. And it's a blessing and a curse because, I love having all the options, but, at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it lacks some of the original sort of, I don't like to call them rules because there weren't really rules, but there were sort of expectations back in the old days because we were really small and there were really small crews. And ultimately when you had beef with somebody, you would just take it to the wall and like you had to piece to get into a crew. And, there were sort of a lot of rules. And, one of the rules that I think was unspoken was, you pretty much wanted to use Krylon for anything other than bombing or maybe Rusto. So that's kind of crazy, right? Because that was our only go-tos. And now the options are insane. I love it. But at the same time, I think you had to have a lot more can control back in the day than you do now, because now the paint's actually made to do graffiti.
Yeah, back then you would have to make it want to move and maneuver and can control.
Right, and we would like my friend that I used to paint with, Boo, and myself, we would like have contests where we would try to do pieces with just like black caps, like Krylon black caps.
Hey brother, sorry to cut you off, but can you see me good? Because you look blurry on my end.
Oh, I can see you. Let me go out here, maybe.
Maybe if you want to connect to your Wi-Fi, maybe you're using the phone server. That's why it makes you look blurry.
Yeah, I'm on the Wi-Fi now.
Okay, that should clear up. I just wanted to make sure you can see me good.
Yeah, I can see you. Sorry if I'm blurry, but
good. As long as you can see me, we're good.
All right, yeah, I can see you, and if you can hear me, that's all. I'm not that great to look at, so.
Yeah, we're good. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure you can see me.
Oh, no worries.
So we were at
So we were just talking about the transition to all the paints.
Yeah.
I actually ended up going to grad school and getting a master's in fine art at UCSD here, right, as a painter, as a studio artist. And, my thesis was on the institutionalization of subcultures, and what happens. You know, it happened to punk music. It happened to skateboarding. You know, I mean, they grow and they grow, and eventually they hit this tipping point where they're on ESPN or whatever, right? And music is the
Definitely.
same way. And as you know, in the early '90s, it happened with hip hop, and graffiti and hip hop were, you know, joined at the hip, along with breakdancing and beatboxing, all the b-boy stuff. And so graffiti got pulled along on that, and it became, I mean, today it's big business, you know, and it's incredible in the sense that, as you said, Montana comes out with all these colors and you have all these options available. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's that good old days thing that everybody has. Oh, back in the day, but I don't know. But
Yeah,
but I kind of liked. I mean, look, when you have a limited color palette, you have to focus on other things, right?
definitely.
When you have high pressure cans and you want details, you have to find a way to do that. Now, you don't have to know the tricks. You don't have to like learn on your own. You can go online, you buy the caps, you can watch a YouTube video. And part of me loves that because that shit took a long time to figure out. You know, I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
how much farther along would I be as an artist if I actually knew what I was doing when I started? I don't even know. But ultimately, um, I do miss those days. And I encourage everybody to try and, you know, limit their palette and limit the tools they use to the bare minimums, because it's going to make you a better artist.
be more creative in a way.
Right, because if you got less to work with and you still need to show up, you got to figure out a way to work it. You know, you got to work those angles and you got to do the math and make it count. So don't get too dependent on all those tools. I mean, I was tripping. I have some Krylon over there. It's got like a trigger finger spray applicator. I'm like, what the fuck is this thing? What happened to just the little caps? I mean, you know? I'm like, I'm missing that. So I actually, you know, one of the things that I think you'd asked or that we had talked about is how Krylon in particular affected early graffiti culture. Because although Rust-Oleum was around, Krylon was the go-to. And I'm about to show you something right now that I don't think anybody's really ever seen. In 1988, we started a clothing company. These investors came in because I got all this press for getting busted as ozone. These investors came in and they wanted to do graffiti clothing company, and we called it Graffitis. And the tagline is the art of the crime. Oh God. All right. So anyhow, so I'm going to show you one of those shirts. There were 4 designs done. They did a run of like 200 each one. They sold them at some fancy boutiques in like LA and Beverly Hills. And evidently they didn't sell too well. So here, check it out. So here, look at this. Graffitis. Can you see? Let's see. Where? Oh, there we go. The art of the crime. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And then, so here's the piece. So you can see this is a Psycho piece. My art crew used to be called Psycho Artists.
Okay.
And I guess, are you seeing it in reverse? Maybe I could flip the camera. Hold on, let me see. Boom. Ah, there we go. All right, Psycho Art. So this is probably a 6-color silk screen or something, which back then, that's a big deal. You can see there's the tag Graffitis, art of the crime. And this is like a crop top, long sleeve sweatshirt. This is like breakdancing gear, man. Like if you want to show your stomach off, this is what you're wearing. so I mean, but if you look at this character, you know, what's on his shirt? It's the Krylon symbol, you know?
Yeah.
Because like that was everything to us, you know? And actually I have this here too. This is one of the few things I kept. This is a Krylon color chart from 1986.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and you can see there's some colors on here that are no longer around. They're probably hard to read, but you know, some of my favorites are obviously those pastel ones. But we had a brick, you know, we had Chippewa, and it's funny because when we all started painting, like nobody bought those colors. People didn't like those colors. They wanted all the bright colors because, again, it was the 80s, man. So we took for granted like the moss greens, and we took for granted those Chippewas and those bricks because they weren't banging and bright enough, you know? And then
Yeah, definitely.
and then like as the 90s started rolling around, I mean, people started realizing, oh, well, we got more colors we could use. We may as well use them, right? So that's when guys like, you know, Ewok and Saber and Revoke and Crush, they really started exploiting that color palette, specifically like Tyke. I mean, he loves that sort of color family, and he just crushes it with it. And then this is the only can left in my collection. This is a Topaz
That's the
Yellow.
only Krylon you have.
Yeah, I gave my whole collection to Evolve from West Coast Artists because
Yeah.
last time I quit, I was like so done with it. I'm like, you know what? You just take this. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. But here we are again. Here we are again. So yeah, so he came up on like he came up on a whole milk crate of like I think hot pink and topaz yellow and maybe even some jungle green. So he had a good come up on that one.
I heard you mention a little bit about crew beef back in those days. Can you share a little bit about crew beef and how it was settled?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, the idea back then was, I mean, you know, if you grew up in the hood, which I didn't really grow up in the hood, but kind of on the next to the tracks, I guess you could say. You know, I mean, you were gonna get into trouble, so you're either gonna like get in a gang or you're gonna get in a graffiti crew. Like if you were a skater or you know kind of a little punk, which I was. So to me, I wasn't really much of a fighter, so I figured graffiti was a better choice because you know the idea was you know anybody could be king. It didn't matter, you know, if you were big and strong. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor or anything. Anybody could do it. So I'm like, that sounds good. Let's handle it, right? And
Yeah.
so initially, I mean, there were a few people I had some minor beef with. There were a few times there was almost some violence. I mean, I ran for my life more than once. I'm not going to lie. You know, when some dude's chasing you with a bat that's like outweighs you by 150 pounds, you run and you run quick. So, but you know, I mean, the idea was if I had beef with another rider, I mean, you might diss each other on the streets if you're taggers or whatever, but you know, the idea was you would take the beef to the wall and you would battle. And then your crews would act as like, you know, sort of third party critics of the pieces, and they would decide who won the battle. And usually there wasn't much. I mean, it was pretty clear who won, you know, and that would solve the beef. And it would give the crews a minute to come together and maybe share a joint or drink some beers and sort of get to know each other. Because, you know, back then it was still pretty sparse. There weren't a lot of graffiti artists. And then, of course, once that subculture merged into more of the mainstream, then you sort of started having the tag bangers, and you know it kind of exploded, and those lines between gangs and graffiti crews got pretty blurred, at least in Los Angeles.
Can you share a little bit about the tag bagging era, or a little bit of what you've seen and how you?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, AWR and MSK and the Seventh Letter and that whole group of crews, you know, they were closely associated with TKO
Yeah.
out of LA. And, you know, TKO, I mean, they would get rowdy on occasion. I don't know if I would call them tag bangers, but they were definitely, you know, the muscle, I would say. And I saw stuff go down at yards, and I saw stuff happen to people at Belmont that, you know, made me uncomfortable and made me sort of realize that I was glad I had left LA, because I moved away from LA in 1990. I moved down to San Diego. So, you know, when I started going back in the mid 90s, like if I go to Belmont or Motor or whatever, like the vibe had changed dramatically. Like the first time I went back to Motor in the 90s from the 80s, like, dude, when we go there in the 80s, you just go with your paint, and you could, you know, you could bring your radio or whatever, and you could just fucking hang out. This time I'm walking up on some guys painting there, and everybody's got bats or weapons, and everybody's like just kind of ready to go to battle. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I don't really want to sign up for that. So I was not in LA during that tag banging era, but here in San Diego, I got to witness a little of the transition. I mean, it's just sad because it's like, I mean, if you're a graffiti artist, do art. That's kind of, it's in the name, for fucking God's sake. It's like graffiti artist. I mean,
Yeah,
so I mean,
definitely.
there's no reason for violence or to, I mean, just I don't know. I'd rather squash that shit. So I just tried. That's one of the reasons that towards the end of the '90s, I stopped painting because it was like, I don't know, man. This is like going a direction I don't really like it. It's getting more commercialized, and at the same time, it's getting more violent. Like I'm not feeling it. So I walked away for a minute.
Definitely. I know that wanted to talk about, in the graffiti world, there's been two terms that have been around for a long time, and I just wanted to see if you give me your take on them.
All
Those
right.
terms be those terms being one, capping, and two, toy. If you could share a little bit on your take on that.
Well, I mean, look, if you want to take somebody to the mat and you're going to cap them, I mean, I think that's kind of part of graffiti. I mean, in some sense, when I look back historically, in the late 80s, there was this time when J.A. from New York came to Los Angeles in 1989. And basically, J.A. stamped any piece that wasn't done by West Coast artists. And he stamped all of KSN's pieces. He stamped UTI. He stamped us. He just stamped everybody. And I mean, that, I was pretty pissed about getting capped back then. But now looking back, it's like, oh shit, I got capped by JA. That's kind of cool. but I think it's just part of like, bringing like you would, if you wanted to battle somebody, that's how you would bring heat to the wall. You would really start taking each other out. So I actually got in a capping battle with this dude named Deluxe. Deluxe was from a crew in the East Bay. And it turned out he went to the same college that I was going to. So we started painting together. Guy's an incredible artist. And we ended up in the Bay Area. And we ended up at this yard. I think the writer's name is Wim. Do you know, you heard of Wim, Mr. Wim?
Mr. Wim?
Yeah, Wim, W-I-M. I think he's from Lords, and he's a great artist, man. Incredible artist. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's up on Instagram now. But we went to paint in his yard, and Deluxe and that guy had mad beef, right? So they decided to battle. And, guess who the judges are? Well, it's myself and Zane from West Coast Artists. And they battled, and Deluxe had a sick piece, but Wim won, dude. What are you going to say? You got to be honest, right?
Yeah.
And so after that, Deluxe had it out for me, man. And he would diss me, and I would diss him back and write some stupid, like, your mama joke or whatever. Like, to me, it was kind of a joke, but, evidently it wasn't a joke to him. And eventually he tried to cap one of my pieces, and it kind of boiled over. We never battled, but we ended up running into each other like 10 years after the fact. And he apologized and I apologized. And it was all good. But more importantly, I think that capping, that sort of activity, it's kind of like a bonding experience. At least it should be, because ultimately it needs to lead up to the fight, right? And if that fight is on the wall, then that's where it's supposed to be. I think of it as like, if you think about a UFC fight, right? And it's going to be a big fight. So they put out all these ads and they do, like, capping is like advertising, because you're telling everybody, like, I got a problem with this dude, and I'm going to handle it. And so it's kind of the build up to the main event, right? And the main event didn't used to involve fucking weapons and drive-bys. It used to just involve paint. And I'd love to get back to that. I mean, I thought battling was fun. You like got to just take out all your stops and try something different and go to the mat. And that buildup was part of the excitement. I mean, talking shit and capping each other, but at the same time knowing that you're not going to take it too personally where you're going to get all like upset about it,
Yeah, definitely. I feel like now the new generation, they don't seem to know the boundary when it comes to that. You know, I
Yeah,
feel like now they
that's a
they want
shame,
to.
man. You know, there's so much energy wasted on beef. I mean, why
Yeah,
don't you just take that energy? Fuck it. Let people look. I don't know you. You don't know me. I didn't walk a mile in your shoes. I don't know what made you the way you are, or why I like you or don't like you. None of that shit matters. Just do your thing and let everybody else do theirs. And you know, put that energy and that negativity, kind of try and turn it around and put it into the wall. Like, I don't care if you could punch me out with one swing. That doesn't matter to me. Let's go to the wall and let's like do some sick art and let's push each other and both get better from it. And let's take that beef and turn it into something positive. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Look at all the other shit we have to deal with right now, right? I mean, we got
yeah, you're right.
COVID shit. We got, you know, hard to make a living wage. We got all kinds of problems, like real problems. Why are you going to bring some imaginary shit to the table just for the sake of it? Like, just squash that shit, man.
Yeah, man. I wish a lot of people could think that way and really go to the wall rather than go grab a gun or go grab a bat or take it to the next level. You know.
Yeah, no, it's sad, and you know, unfortunately, I mean, we've lost a lot of really talented people to that kind of shit. And you know, if it's not that, we've lost them to drugs. We've lost them, you know, to suicide. I mean, you know, I think graffiti is really, if you're doing it for the right reasons, it's one of the purest art forms in the world. I mean, think about it. You're going under a bridge. You're risking your freedom. You might step on a needle. You might get attacked by, God knows, some homeless guy or something. You're doing all that to do a painting that you come back the next day, it might already be buffed. I mean, you can't get much purer than that. You're doing it because you love it. You're doing it because you're willing to risk all of that to get up on the wall. And whether you like the other guy down the street that's doing it or whether you have beef with him or not, you guys have to recognize that no matter what, you share that same passion. And like, you might not like each other, but you should at least respect each other and just keep your distance and, you know, get
Just
through
keep
it.
pushing.
Yeah. So
Can you share a little bit about when it comes to a lot of writers using the word toy? How do you take that word? Is that something that you use, or how do you feel about
back in the day, I think we would definitely use the word toy. You know, I mean, I remember the first time I painted at Woodman Yard in 1987 as Ozone. I was just learning how to paint. I figured out how to make a skinny cap on my own. Like I cut out the center of the krylon lid and I poked a hole in it. And I remember I did a character, and next to the character I did a character in all skinny cap, like not even filled in, just like an outline. It's pretty bad. I gotta try and find it. I mean, it's a little embarrassing, right? But I wrote someday I will be king, Ozone. So I go back the next day, take a picture of my girl, and of course, crossed out, toy written over it. You know, I'm like, oh man. So look, everybody's been on the toy side at one time or another. And really, I mean, a toy is somebody that's learning, you know? And I mean, the thing is with graffiti artists, you know, a lot of them have self-esteem problems. So a toy is someone who might not just be learning, but might really think they're fucking all that, but they're really not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, look, there were times in my history when I got a little bigger for my britches than I should have, and I got slapped down one way or the other. You know, the universe has a way of taking us out when we get too big for our own head. But you know, I think if anybody is painting a piece or doing a mural and they're doing it for the right reasons because they love it and because it makes them happy. I mean, when I painted for the first time in 5 years, it brought joy to my soul that I haven't felt in 5 years, you know? So if you're painting for the right reason, it doesn't matter how good you are or how bad you are. You know, that doesn't make you a toy. A toy is more about your attitude, I think. You know, if you act like a chump and you think you're all that and you talk shit and you try to cause drama, I mean, dude, we're not like a group of women over here trying to cause drama all the time. We're like graffiti artists. Let's just do some art. You know?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. There's a there's a question that I like to ask everyone that hop on the Krylon Talk. Do you have a favorite sneaker you like wearing when you're drawing or painting?
Of course, I actually still have my original Air Jordans from 1987 that I still wear when I piece.
Dope.
Yeah, and now I have some new Nikes. Like I like to wear my, if I'm not wearing those, because those are like for special occasions. I have some really
Okay.
sick Air Force Ones in all different colors that I like. Once I can't wear them anymore, like going out because they get dirty or scuffed, then they become my painting shoes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just became my top question I like to ask everybody because everybody got their own little style and I think it's cool.
No, totally. Although my last two pieces I painted in my like Nevados, like I didn't even care. I'm like, it's gonna be 100 degrees. I'm gonna be like in a field, screw that,
Is there any writer that you could possibly share that you could say influenced you coming up?
Oh yeah, there's a number of writers that influenced me coming up. I mean, I think the biggest influence on me was a guy that doesn't write anymore, but his name was Rise, and he was
Right.
from KSN.
Okay.
And so he had a big influence on me. I would say Risky had an influence on me. I mean, when I first started, I would like look at spray can art and try and draw letters, and it was tough, man. I had a hard time like coming up with ideas. So I might take a Risk piece and turn it upside down and try to find a letter in it. And if I could find a letter, even if it wasn't a letter in my name, if that letter kind of had a fresh style to it, I might use that to actually do a piece in that style. So, I turn pieces upside down and sideways and whatever to try and find other letters other than Risk, right? So
Yeah.
I did that a little bit with Risk and with Charlie from DTK. That guy's an incredible artist. He influenced me in the sense that like his color choices and how clean everything was. I mean, I was just talking to an artist named Vapor from TCF the other day about
Okay.
how, people used to take their time to make sure those fills were solid. And people used to take time to like cut in all the lines. Like it wasn't about rushing. It was about like can control and making it perfect. Right. And now it's
Yeah.
like, I see a lot of talented guys who just kind of rush it, So Charlie taught me about that. And then other than that, the guys I grew up painting with, Look, Mystic from TCF, Boo from TCF, and of course Crush and Wiser. All those guys had influences on my style. And over the next few years, as I continue to release a lot of my old work, I have over 300 photos from the early 90s of just my work. So it's going to take a while to get them all out. But you can see those influences. They're pretty clear. In fact, I would say one of my first legal mural that I did in Tarzana, in the West Valley, the one that the cops buffed over right away. Like
Yeah.
that piece, I mean, if you look at that piece and you look at a Rise piece, it's like I was straight biting him. I mean, I was on that guy's jock for sure. I just loved his style, and eventually it became my own. And it's cool to emulate the people that inspire you, but at some point you take all that knowledge and all that sort of, all that time you spend sort of, I don't want to call it replicating, but sort of engaging their style. You take all of that and you make it your own. And once it becomes your own, then it kind of goes out and it's in a different direction. And although there's still this foundation that you can connect to that original artist that influenced you, like you're on a whole nother level. And that's what everyone should strive for, really.
Dope. That's everybody. It's like something that feels like someone. Most people are scared to admit. I look up to that guy or that guy influenced me to build my style.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of people, even when you talk about like spray can art, like, I mean, I look at the stuff that Shu did. I look at some of those guys from AOK crew in New York. I mean, that stuff, I would stare at those letters for hours and hours, and I swear I could never draw like that, no matter how hard I tried. I'd be like, oh, I got this. And then you look at it, you're like, oh. God. Yeah. So it's just practice, practice, practice. But, you know, those influences are important because, you know, I mean, you might be influenced by 20 different people, and the goal is to somehow take bits and pieces from each one, and out of that create something new. And that's hard.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Is there something you could say to a new generation out there painting now, or someone that just started painting recently? Is there any words you could share?
Yeah. You know, I mean, look, if you're really in it for the art, then do the art. Don't do the drama, all this crew stuff, whether it's internal or outside the crews or whatever. Like, don't let that shit derail you. Just keep painting. Just do it for you. And eventually it's all going to make sense in the end. But if you have that negative energy, and I know a lot of people, especially under today's stresses, have a lot of that, just transform it into the best piece you ever did. And every time you go to that wall to paint, you paint the best piece you ever painted. And that's what keeps you going. You're never going to get it perfect, because if you do, then you just like, then that's the mic drop moment. You never paint again. It'll never be perfect. You'll always go back and say, oh, I missed that highlight, or oh shit, I should have cut in that corner. So it'll never end. Just always keep evolving. Like, one thing I promised myself when I just started painting again, like not even 2 weeks ago, I said, all right, every time I paint, I'm going to try a technique or something I've never done before. So the last piece I painted that I've just finished, I think I put it on the wall, the one from San Diego. I think it's on Instagram. I did the whole outline with a foam brush. Like, I never used a brush on the wall in my life, but I just wanted to see how it worked. And I have some really crazy shit that I've been working on that involves mixing brushes and spray that I haven't seen anybody do. So I'm really excited to bring that to the wall. And in fact, I'm going to explore one of those techniques next Tuesday. I'm going to be painting with one of my old crew members, my friend Chaos. He's from West LA. He's been in TCF since 1988. And I haven't seen him in 20 years. So it'll be good to paint.
Oh, that's quite some time.
Yeah, well, I just painted last weekend. I painted in Boyle Heights with Atlas and with Alloy. Atlas didn't paint, but he was chilling out, and with Boo. And Boo was like my partner back in the day, and we figured out we hadn't seen each other in 22 years.
That's a long time.
I mean, there might be some writers on. I mean, how old were you 22 years ago?
Yeah, I'm 27, brother.
So you're 5 years old. That's the last time I painted with my partner there, right? So I mean, look, and the only other thing I'd say is, like, you know, I mean, one thing that used to happen back in the day that never happens anymore is if there was a burner in a yard, like, even if the wall space was limited, that shit could run for years. There were 2 pieces at the Woodman Yard in North Hollywood in '88 that I think both of those pieces ran for probably 18 months. And that yard had new pieces every day, but there was a Skill Rock piece that was so dope that ran forever. And the one right next to it was Wise and Sens. And it said Wise, Sens, like connected. And both of those pieces just, they would have kept running too, but then Jay capped them. But
the New York that you mentioned?
Yeah, that's when Jay came. Those were 2 of the pieces he capped. Those things ran. And so I think just, you know, respect. I mean, look, I understand if you're coming up, you're anxious to learn, you want to get up. But when you go to that wall, like, even if the guy that you're painting over, you might not be better than him, he might have more experience, just at least give him the respect to do everything you can to do your best job. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you're going to go over somebody, you might not be better than them. I mean, you know, it happens, right? There's this much wall and there's this many people that want to paint it. I mean, look at the wall in Venice. That shit gets gone over 10 times a day sometimes. So just, you know, at least give that piece you're going over the respect it deserves by actually taking yourself to that wall and doing something special. That's it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Just give it everything you got.
Otherwise, why are you wasting your time? You're either like, look, and I think getting up's that way. You know, it's like poker. You know, you don't play every hand, right? You don't play every hand, but when you get that good hand, you go all in, right? So you should
Yeah.
approach graffiti the same way. I mean, rather than painting like a bunch of half-ass pieces, why don't you paint one that's really dope?
And go home feeling great about it.
Exactly. Don't go home feeling like, oh, I rushed that. Like I kind of just had to rush one of the pieces I just painted. And it still came out good and I'm happy with it for the most part, but still, I felt rushed. I don't like that. I mean, do it right or just don't do it at all.
Can you share a little bit about how it was running into another graffiti writer back in the day that you didn't know of? It was like the first time meeting them. Because I feel like now when graffiti writers bump into each other at the yard or wherever it is at, it seems like there's tension, but they don't even know each other. It
Yeah, I
seems
think
like
everybody, well, even back then, I mean, I remember the first time I met Boo. He was with his
mm-hmm.
homie. I want to say he was with Send or Stop. They were from a crew called Hit and Run Crew in the Valley. And the first time I met them was in this yard that I started in this wash. And like the neighbors were cool with it. Like they liked the art, so they were like cool with it. So we'd be down in this wash and connected to the LA River, like downstream or whatever. But and the first time I met Boo, I was pretty sure I was gonna get jumped. I thought he was gonna jack me for sure. so
Why is
so
that?
well, I don't know. He just kind of had this attitude, man. Like, like you said, it's like there's this tension, right? I think there's always that tension in the yard if you're unsure of yourself, right? I mean,
Definitely.
like, I mean, look, if I'm gonna be in a yard, I'm gonna think I'm gonna have some beef with somebody. I'm either gonna like just directly engage them and try and squash it before it happens, or I'm just gonna be cool, and just kind of like let them do their thing, let me do my thing. But I think that tension exists because you never know who you're talking to. I mean, I was painting one time in downtown San Diego, and I turn around and this dude's going through my trunk, like taking my shit. And so I'm like running up to him and being like, what the fuck? And I didn't know who he was. But when I found out at the end of his shotgun, And I'm like, all right, well, maybe I should really moderate the way I engage people. Because if you've ever had a shotgun pointed at you from like 2 feet away from your head by somebody who clearly would use it, it's not a good feeling at all. and
It definitely isn't. It definitely isn't.
yeah, and so I mean, look, again, that tension in the yard, that shit's real because that guy that you're meeting might want to like punch you in the face. You don't know. I mean, you're in a group. So I just always approach everybody. I'm always like I'm going to make the introduction. I'm going to say what's up. I'm just going to be super cool and just like hopefully it'll go well. And if it seems like it's going sideways, fucking exit stage left, baby.
The last question I want to ask you, brother, before I let you go is, can you share your thoughts on where you think graffiti's heading? Like, where will we see it 2 generations from today?
Oh man, it's funny. I kind of thought that bombing would be over by now, but it's just more crazy than ever, isn't it? So
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, look, 26 letters in our alphabet make every thought, every idea, every dream, every sentence that comes out of our mouth. Okay, maybe a few other letters if you're speaking Spanish too, whatever, The point is, those 26 letters define everything in our world, man. So the notion that graffiti is going to run out of steam or going to run out of style or going to stop being innovative and on the forefront, I think that's false. I think that those 26 letters, I mean, they can define the infinity of our magical world. And I think graffiti can take those letters and do the same thing with them.
Definitely, brother. Right about that. Again, brother, I just want to say thank you for, giving me a couple minutes of your time and hopping on KrylonTalk.
No worries. Thanks for having me on KrylonTalk, man. I appreciate it.
Much love, brother. Stay safe out there.
All right. Yeah, you have a good one. You stay safe and healthy.
We'll meet each other after the corona.
That sounds like a plan.
All right, brother. Much love.
Right. See you later.
Bye. Shout out to everybody that tapped in. Till the next one. Peace.